Hello, welcome to our presentation. Today we'll be presenting on ransomware, an evolving threat, and a potential solution. The members of our team are Michael Acosta, myself, Juan Vargas, and Kalin Zaluzec. Michael would start by talking about the problem.
So ransomware is a form of malware that's targeting valuable computers that have information such as medical files or financials. And the attacker is going to encrypt those files and demand a ransom payment in exchange for access to the files back. So this is a typical message you see here on the right. It came from an attack called WannaCry in 2017 that affected 110,000 IP addresses. So the payments here range from $300 to $600. And it's mainly targeting out-of-date Windows systems and corporations.
The threat of ransomware is an increasing problem. This affects both individuals, government, institutions, and companies. In 2015, the average ransom demand was around $300. By the end of 2016, it went up to around $1,100, and the problem is only getting worse. With the prevalence of big data storage, companies and governments have to be especially prevalent to educate their employees on the best practices to use to prevent and mitigate the impact of possible ransomware attacks. You can see on the graph, the chart to the right, some of the main services impacted by ransomware attacks in 2015. The biggest attacked service was manufacturing, as well as energy and technology. So this is an increasing problem that has to be that we have to be aware of.
So I'm going to talk about challenges now. And like Juan just said, ransomware is becoming a problem that we can't ignore. It's becoming more and more common, but also it's becoming more and more advanced. So the newer ransomwares that are getting deployed, they're being harder to defend against, and they're having extra features that make them even more threatening. An example of this is just leaking files if a ransom is not paid, or even selling the data even if the ransom is paid. So instead of trying to keep up with these new forms of ransomware, because our defense mechanisms have to constantly be updated, we try to explore a somewhat different approach that will allow us to defend better against every type of ransomware, both current and future variants. So here's our recommendations and our potential solution to ransomware. And we choose to approach this problem from a standpoint of game theory. And what that means is we're going to think of ransomware as a game between two players, the attacker or the ransomware and the victim. And the goal of each of these players is to protect their own interests. The attacker wants to generate profit, and the victim wants to not have to pay ransom and keep their own files protected. And the way that we're going to do this is something called security through obscurity. And this entails self-encrypting our own files so that the attacker cannot sell them if the ransom is not paid. And it also entails keeping fake data. And this is so that if an attacker does successfully launch a ransomware attack, potentially no data of value is lost. And so down here at the bottom, we have two equations. And these are simplified versions of the actual equations from our source material. So this top equation here, this represents the attacker's potential profit from executing a ransomware attack. And notice here that they're going to make profit either way if the ransom is paid, or if the ransom isn't paid and they sell the data at its market value. Now this bottom equation is a little bit more complex and I won't be able to explain it in this presentation, but when we implement our security through obscurity practices, the attacker's potential profits are far decreased, and potentially the attacker's optimal strategy in this game might be to not launch the ransomware attack at all. So we're hoping to discourage a ransomware attack with our measures.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our presentation. We look forward to talking to you in person in more detail about the topic. Thank you.